Hello, welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. So, big news to start today off, to start this week's update off with. We've talked about this a lot previously, and that is Azure Communication Services and the Teams interop part. We were promised it coming to GA from beta in early December, and over the weekend, that time has come. So, I'm recording this on the 13th of December, so it is not officially the midpoint of December, so I guess that is still early. This is great. This is really good to see. I actually didn't think we were going to see it this side of Christmas, so I'm pleasantly surprised that this has been announced, on schedule as described, which is really nice. It was promised at Ignite, and at Ignite they said, it's coming in early December. So it's come, so that's great. What does this mean? Well, for all sorts of developers, I think the preview of the Teams interop functionality for ACS has been really exciting, but it's been just that. It's been in preview, so we've not really been able to put it into production solutions that are being supported and you can take into market. It's really just been in preview, so we've been understanding the capabilities, building them in, and now we can go forward with them and kind of take them to market. So that's really exciting. I do have some thoughts about this. So I've done a blog post which kind of announces it, and actually there's a few things you should be aware of. The first is that there are new versions of some of the NPM packages, so go check and make sure you're on the latest version, because in line with this announcement a few days ago, there was a new version bump. So 1.3.2, for instance, is the latest version of communication calling. And previous to that, there was a 1.3.1, but it was beta. It was not. It was a pre-release one. So the 1.3.2 is now the GA release. So you should go and get that. And that's only just become available. So you almost certainly, unless you've been updating daily in the past week, you will need to go and do an update, and that will get you on the very latest version of all the packages. So that's definitely worth doing, because then you'll be on the latest GA supported code, and then that way you shouldn't hit any problems. One of the interesting things for me, I think, is a little bit in how this was announced. I've got like a slight issue with how this was announced. So this is my blog post on it, but what I wanted to show you was the announcement blog post, which is fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. This is from the Azure Updates blog. But I think it's kind of interesting. Like, this doesn't actually talk about the meetings part. So this is where I think it gets confusing. So what actually has become GA from preview is the ability for an Azure Communication Services client to join a Teams meeting that is hosted in Teams, along with, and talk to other Teams users who are using Microsoft Teams. So you've got Teams users in a Teams meeting. Now you've got Azure Communication Services users who can join that same Teams meeting, and they can all talk to each other. And that's really cool. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to take anything away from the fact that that is really cool. That's really good. For me, that is not Azure Communication Services interop with Microsoft Teams, because I think without qualifying it to say it's just for Teams meetings, I think it's confusing. But that's just me. The reason I think it's doubly confusing actually is because then this goes on here to say that this really confusing statement here that says, as a bonus, it's only built to Azure resource, meaning use. So this is a bad sentence anyway, because it starts with meaning, but meaning usage for Microsoft Teams app users interacting with Azure Communication Service applications is free. What does that mean? Actually, what it means is Teams users in a Teams meeting don't pay any more money because there's an Azure Communication Services client joining. Although the Azure Communication Services client you will pay money for, because it's billed on consumption. So, I mean, yes, that makes sense to me. Like, if you've got a Microsoft Teams meeting and you've got Microsoft Teams clients joining that Microsoft Teams meeting, they don't pay any more money just because there's an Azure person in the meeting too. I think that is kind of makes sense. Calling it out like that, I think, is slightly confusing, because it makes it sound like there's something that's free that wasn't previously free, but actually nothing changes here. For me, it's kind of confusing, but I think I understand what they're trying to say, which is that if you've got a Teams meeting and you've got Azure Communication Services joining, it's only the Azure Communication Services clients that will pay that consumption charge for joining that meeting. The Teams people won't, because they're already covered by their Teams licenses. So, yeah, that's just worth you knowing. So that's why I'm telling you, because you might read that and kind of jump to a slightly different conclusion. The other thing that I think is worth calling out that isn't really super obvious in that blog post, this is just for meeting join. This isn't any other kind of interop. We know, kind of Microsoft has said previously, they're keen to do a bit more in this area, but we don't know what that looks like yet. So, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see on some of that stuff. But this is for meeting join specifically. All right, so that was worth clearing up, I think. And like I say, it's good. It's really good to see this happening this side of Christmas. Yeah, because it's been coming for a long time. Obviously, we've all been really looking forward to it and really waiting for it, because it will unlock some really interesting scenarios and some really cool stuff. The other thing I kind of called out at the end of that blog post is that we are also saying goodbye to Scott Van Villette, or Scott Van Villette, I'm not sure which, sorry. He's a CVP for... I'm not really sure what his exact job title is, but he's been kind of responsible for bringing IC3, ACS, and all this sort of stuff along in the past 4 years. And I think it feels like he's been the driving force behind getting Azure Communication Services out to the world. He's obviously been incredibly busy in the past few years with scaling up IC3 to meet the demands. And I think actually a lot of the times when you hear people say that Teams has scaled up to meet the demands of the pandemic, actually, if you dig into it, it's IC3 that has had to scale up, because it's IC3 runs the voice, the video, and the messaging parts of Teams. It's that's the communication platform under the hood. And so it's been Scott and his team that have really run that. And so, yeah, I think it's been probably a really busy 4 years for Scott, but probably quite an exciting one as well, I imagine. So it'd be interesting to see where he goes next. He doesn't actually mention it he put out a LinkedIn update, which I've linked to in the blog, talking about kind of, what's next, and he doesn't actually sort of specifically name the company or anything other than saying it's out of this world. So, we'll see where he goes. He's not going until early January, I don't think, so we'll see then. Maybe out of this world. Maybe I'm thinking SpaceX. I'm thinking maybe NASA, but probably SpaceX. Something like that, maybe. We'll have to see. Maybe I'm completely wrong and it's something completely different. But anyway, we'll keep an eye on that, because I think Scott's a great person, and it's been interesting to see what he's done in the past 4 years and bringing, ACS to market and to developers. So this is kind of a nice thing to happen as well before Scott goes as well, in my mind. I don't doubt he cares, but, whatever. All right, other things that have been happening. There's been a big redesign of the Microsoft Teams store. So not anything that particularly will impact developers, but it's worth knowing that everything, the look and feel of everything has changed. So just, I guess, for documentation and for training, this is worth being aware of as well. And also just, so you're not completely wrong-footed by it. Here are some screenshots of how it looks. It looks nice. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, it looks sleek. It looks modern. I think as long as it looks like it still belongs in Teams, I think it's okay. I worry slightly that this is being redesigned separately from some of the rest of the Teams and the channels and the rest of the Teams experience, because all of these individual experiences inside Teams are basically just apps themselves. So they all can get styled differently. They can all pick up different styling. So as long as they don't deviate and Teams ends up feeling like a collection of disparate things, I think this is fine. I think there's been a focus on discoverability, which is really good. And because obviously the number of apps in the Teams App Store is growing, and it's all about bringing to the front the stuff that's really important to you and the stuff that is most likely to be useful. So I think that's given them more spaces here to spotlight applications with this carousel, and also sort of segment them into these different sections as well, which I think is interesting. This is interesting. I've never seen this before, actually. I've never seen Microsoft call out exactly how many apps there are on the App Store. with this sentence here. There are over 1,000 apps available in Teams for you to explore, which is amazing. Is it? I mean, it is amazing. 1,000 apps is good. I think that's probably a little under what I might have expected, perhaps. But yeah, that's interesting. I've never seen that before. I don't think I've ever seen Microsoft talk about the exact numbers of apps in the App Store. So that's interesting. Anyway, and a little nod at the bottom to what's coming next. Under the hood, I think the App Store has undergone quite a big rewrite, and so this visual refresh is one part of that, but there's probably other things they want to do as well now that that's done, and to make it easier to get apps installed, and then probably work a little bit on the visibility and bringing the right apps to people at the right time. So as developers, I don't think this changes anything too much. Keep an eye out, I guess, around the categories of how on submission, just to make sure you are submitting your apps in the right place, because the more information you can give Microsoft in terms of the correct categories for your applications, the more likely and more able they are to surface them at the right place and to promote them and to spotlight them. So that's good for you as an app developer, because it means Microsoft are basically doing your marketing for you, which is nice. But yeah, that's just worth remembering. On the submissions, make sure you've got as much information as possible in the description, in the keywords, in the category names, category choices you make, and everything like that. All right. Couple of other. This is going to be a long one today. I thought it was going to be a really short one because leading up to Christmas and everything, it kind of starts getting slow. But actually, there's quite a lot going on. So I want to call out this video by Bob German around Azure AD single sign-on for Teams apps. I know I've spoken previously about single sign-on for Teams, and I think I've talked about different walkthrough videos on doing single sign-on for Teams, and I know Yannick has done talks about it. For me, you can never talk about this stuff too much. Like, it is kind of confusing, and so the more explanatory videos that we have talking about this stuff, the better, because I still can't do this without looking it up and without, I don't, why should I, right? But what I'm trying to say is, I've built several applications that use SSO, and it's still confusing every time. So this is really useful. I think the more videos like this, the better. And this is a good walkthrough video from Bob talking about SSO, talking about what it is, and part of the confusing, talking about the confusion that actually sometimes it's actually lots of different things, and there is no one thing that is SSO, but also how you do it, why it's important, and then how to build it into various bits of Teams, depending on what it is you're trying to do with Teams. There's also a ton of good references at the bottom, which is really useful. So this is a really good resource if you're looking to do something with SSO. If you've tried to do SSO in the past and you've given up, come back and watch this video. If you don't actually have a requirement to do SSO, but you do Teams apps and you're sort of in the back of your mind, it's probably something that you should know, go watch the video now, because then you can always come back to it and refer to it. You don't have to have a project that uses this straight away, but just immerse yourself in it. Something good to do, when it gets quiet over the Christmas period, maybe add it to your watch later list, and kind of you can consume it then. But yeah, great video to kind of go through, and so yeah, definitely bring that to your attention. And then finally, a blog post by Vesa Juvonen in the Microsoft 365 platform blog, talking about a new public preview of the SharePoint framework, the SPFX 1.14. Why is this important? Okay, well, it's into public preview now. It's going to go GA early 2022. So your feedback now is really important. So it's, if you're one of those people that likes to get the early previews, try them out and kick the tires and feedback, this is the time to go and do that for 1.14. Some interesting new things in this. There's some updated to the scaffolding for when you go and create things with Teams applications. So there's a new minimal template, meaning you can go and start development, but it's got the minimal amount of code in it. It's like the thinnest version of a scaffolding, just enough to get it working. And that's, by the way, is the type of scaffolding I really like. I don't like really kind of entire projects as scaffolding. I like these kind of minimal, this is everything you need and no more. There's some other changes to some of the SharePoint stuff. I mean, I'd say it's mostly a SharePoint focused release. There's some stuff on adaptive card caching, which is interesting for performance. But yeah, you can see some things here's some screenshots of the new web part template in Teams, and along with information and instructions on how to install it, and then a bit on what SharePoint Framework is, and then a whole bunch of extra links as well. So if you already use the SharePoint Framework and you want to see what's in the latest and newest version, you can go and check that out now. If you're brand new into the framework, go probably halfway down this blog post and start reading, and then come back up to the top, because it's definitely worth something. It's definitely something that is worth getting into if you're in this world. But yeah, good to see that. And again, good to see this stuff coming out in December, which is traditionally quite a quiet month, but seems like everyone is got stuff they want to get done and get out before the end of the year, so that's really good. All right, and especially from Vaser, actually, who was at European Collaboration Summit and who probably already has quite enough things to do rather than sort of pushing out new stuff as well. So yeah, everything is moving forward at a crazy rate of knots, which is kind of good and exciting. But yeah, lots and lots of things to do. All right, I think that's everything from me. Those are all the things I wanted to talk through. It's been a busy week for sure. Don't know what this week is going to hold. More announcements, maybe. Maybe not. We'll see. Just have to wait and see. It'd be interesting to see whether teams do have stuff they want to get out this year, because probably this week is, I'm going to guess, is probably the last week in which you can do it before it really starts to get slow going into Christmas. We shall see. But yeah, whatever it is you're doing this week, if you've got stuff you need to get out this week, good luck with that. And or if you're kind of in the ramp down to Christmas and trying to tie up all the loose ends and finish all the projects, good luck with that too. I do have some projects I'm trying to finish up and get done. One of those is the book. I haven't forgotten about the book. The book is still happening. It's funny. I completely ignored everybody saying books are way more work than you think they're going to be, and it turns out books are way more work than you think they're going to be. So that's me. I am going to publish it either back end of this year or right at the beginning of the new year, whether or not it's ready or not, and just keep building on it, because I said I was going to do it at the end of this year, so that is what I'm going to do. But I may just have to, then be building it out in 2022. But I'm using a publisher that lets me do that, so whenever it is you buy it, you just get all the updates for free. So I feel like that's probably a better way of doing it anyway, because all this stuff changes all the time. So this means I can keep it always up to date, and you always get the latest version of that book. So that feels like the right way to do a book in our space, in our industry at this time. Anyway, that's everything from me. I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you again next time.